Have you ever stopped to think about Wyoming? If you ask most people, they might tell you it's a vast, empty place with some cows, a few small towns, and a couple of tourist spots like Yellowstone. But what if I told you Wyoming doesn't really exist at all? That's right. In the age of information, where every state should be teeming with culture, politics, and people, Wyoming seems to be the odd one out, quiet, empty, and barely noticed. But what if its very existence is a carefully crafted illusion? A state so perfectly designed to remain under the radar that no one questions it. Today, let's dive into why Wyoming might be nothing more than a carefully disguised cover-up. And once you hear the reasoning behind it, you might start to wonder, does Wyoming truly exist, or is it just another government-created mirage? Why would the government fake Wyoming's existence? The government has a lot of secrets to hide, and not every state has the same level of importance when it comes to national security, resource management, or strategic deception. Wyoming, with its vast empty lands, low population, and minimal attention from the media, makes the perfect candidate for a fabricated state. But why would the government bother to create and maintain the illusion of Wyoming? The government might have created the illusion of Wyoming's existence for a variety of strategic reasons, many of which revolve around control, distraction, and secrecy. Wyoming's vast, sparsely populated landscape makes it the perfect cover for activities that require isolation and minimal public interference. With its low population and minimal media attention, Wyoming becomes a place where the government can carry out covert operations without attracting unwanted scrutiny. By maintaining the facade of a legitimate state, the government is able to shield important military bases, scientific research facilities, or resource extraction efforts from prying eyes. Furthermore, Wyoming's placement in the center of the U.S. gives it a geographically strategic position. It's a blank spot in the public consciousness, and this allows the government to use it as a psychological distraction. People rarely ask questions about Wyoming because it's just a quiet, under-the-radar part of the country. The illusion of Wyoming helps maintain the false sense of national stability and control, diverting attention from areas that might hold greater national significance. In addition, Wyoming serves as a convenient cover for resource management. Its so-called wind energy production is just a front for exploiting natural resources that are far more valuable and politically sensitive. The low visibility of the state means no one questions where these resources go or how they are used. The state's non-importance allows for the free flow of government funding into the area for projects that may have little to do with the public's knowledge or benefit. These financial channels remain largely unexamined, and Wyoming acts as a sort of black hole for funds and energy. Ultimately, Wyoming's existence as a state is a masterstroke of misdirection. It allows the government to keep attention focused on a non-entity while real, important activities happen behind the scenes, away from public view. The quiet, empty nature of Wyoming ensures that it remains largely invisible, making it the ideal place for a multitude of secretive operations and keeping the public distracted from more pressing matters. The entire concept of Wyoming serves as a brilliant smokescreen, where the very emptiness of the state conceals the true depth of what's going on within it. Let's see 10 reasons why this state might don't exist. 1. No one knows anyone from Wyoming, because they don't exist. Think about it, have you ever met someone who said, "I'm from Wyoming"? Neither have I. You might know someone who has driven through Wyoming or heard about Wyoming, but an actual Wyomingite? Suspiciously rare. In fact, try this experiment, ask 10 random people if they know anyone from Wyoming. Chances are, you'll get nothing but blank stares. Even online, most so-called Wyoming residents seem eerily generic, like NPCs in a video game. Some people claim to have been to Wyoming, but their stories are always oddly vague, lots of open space, or, "it was quiet." That's exactly what someone trying to cover up a government hoax would say. Now, compare Wyoming to other states. You probably know someone from California, Texas, Florida, or even tiny states like Rhode Island. But Wyoming? A total mystery. It's almost as if the government just made up Wyoming to fill space on the map and keep us distracted. 2. It has the highest wind energy production in the US, an energy that can be faked. Wyoming supposedly produces more wind energy than almost any other state. But here's the problem: wind is invisible. You can't see it, you can't touch it, and you definitely can't measure it yourself. So how do we really know that Wyoming is generating all this energy? Think about it: if the government wanted to create a fake state, what better way to justify its existence than by making it a massive energy producer? It's the perfect cover story. Unlike coal or oil, no one has to actually see anything being extracted. They just tell us that giant wind turbines are spinning, and we're supposed to believe they're making power. Convenient. And let's be real, have you ever met anyone who works in Wyoming's so-called wind industry? Who's maintaining these turbines? Who's collecting this energy? More importantly, where's all this electricity going? No one really knows. The whole thing sounds suspiciously like an elaborate scheme to funnel government money into a state that doesn't actually exist. 3. There's more cows than people, and that's a red flag. Apparently, Wyoming has more cows than humans. But let's pause and think about this for a moment. What kind of state is just cows? I mean, are we supposed to believe that a whole state can survive off of mooing machines? It's not like this is just some minor detail. Wyoming's cow-to-person ratio is downright absurd. With only around 580,000 residents, the state supposedly hosts nearly 1.5 million cows. So, what does that mean? Wyoming doesn't need people. It needs cattle. And if we're talking about a state that's heavily invested in farming and ranching, where are all the ranchers? Where are the people who work with these cows? You never hear about them. And the cows? They're strangely silent in all this. Maybe it's not about feeding people, maybe it's about keeping a fake state alive through an endless loop of fake agricultural business. You get the cows in place, and then you just move some cattle around to make it look like the state is working. It's a perfect cover for a state that only pretends to exist. 4. It's the least populated state, because there's no one there. Wyoming has the smallest population of any state, with just about 580,000 residents. But let's break this down. If Wyoming was real, why don't more people live there? In fact, how are there even that many people there at all? It's so empty, it feels like the government is just pretending to populate it with a handful of people in an attempt to make it look legitimate. Think about it, the state has less than the population of many small cities, but we're supposed to believe that it's an actual, thriving state. Wyoming has tons of open space, tons of empty land, yet somehow, no one wants to fill it. Doesn't add up. Every other state has either big cities or major attractions drawing people in. But Wyoming? No major cities, no iconic landmarks, aside from Yellowstone, which may or may not be in Wyoming anyway. If Wyoming was real, it'd be booming with people. But it's not. Because it's not real. The low population could be a deliberate move, a state so sparsely populated that it's hard to prove how few people actually live there. It's just a facade, an elaborate set where no one really lives. Just a few people playing along with the Wyoming experiment to keep the illusion going. 5. It's just a buffer zone for Yellowstone, because maybe Yellowstone isn't in Wyoming. We've all heard about Yellowstone National Park, right? It's this massive, world-renowned natural wonder. But here's the catch, a huge chunk of it is in Wyoming. But what if Wyoming isn't even a real state, it's just there to make room for Yellowstone? Maybe the whole state is just a clever buffer zone created to hide the true location of one of the most mysterious national parks in the world. Yellowstone is full of geysers, bison, and that super suspicious supervolcano. But if you really look at it, isn't it a bit strange that this incredibly important park is just sitting there, mostly surrounded by empty land with nothing else in sight? Wyoming could be an artificial creation to mask the true nature of Yellowstone, drawing attention away from whatever else is going on there. And think about it, does anyone ever talk about Wyoming apart from Yellowstone? You never hear about anyone going to Wyoming just to visit Wyoming. It's always, I went to Yellowstone, or I passed through Wyoming on the way to something else. Wyoming is simply hiding in plain sight behind the allure of Yellowstone's natural beauty, a convenient smokescreen for whatever government secrets are tucked away in the park. If you enjoy this video, please give us a like, leave a comment about your thoughts on Wyoming and don't forget to subscribe as well. And now, let's continue with the video. 6. No major cities, just vague towns. Where's the real infrastructure? Every real state has at least one major city that everyone knows, whether it's New York, Los Angeles, or Chicago. But Wyoming? The so-called cities there are, well, let's be honest, they're not exactly city material. Cheyenne and Casper sound like names straight out of a low-budget Western movie, not bustling, vibrant metropolises where thousands of people live. And don't even get me started on the fact that these cities barely make a blip on any national map. It gets even weirder when you look for actual infrastructure. Most states have highways, skyscrapers, busy streets, bustling downtowns. Wyoming? It's got a lot of empty fields and small towns with populations smaller than your average high school. Have you ever been to Cheyenne? How long did it take to see everything? A day? Half a day? Maybe the whole city can be walked through in an afternoon. If Wyoming were a real state, you'd think they'd have at least one city where you could get lost. But no. It's like someone put a couple of buildings together and decided to call it a city. And let's talk about technology and modern amenities. You'd think a state that produces all that wind energy would have cutting-edge infrastructure, but instead, it's a lot of roads that go nowhere and small towns with sketchy Wi-Fi connections. Sounds more like a forgotten backlit of a reality TV show than an actual state with a real, modern lifestyle. 7. Aliens, secret bases, and government cover. UPS, Wyoming's too quiet. Wyoming is far too close to Area 51 for comfort. It's basically in the backyard of one of the most famous secret military bases in the world, and nobody talks about it. Have you ever wondered why the government decided to plop Wyoming right next to this top-secret base? Maybe it's not a coincidence. What if Wyoming isn't a state at all, but just a massive, controlled zone designed to hide something important? Wyoming's isolation makes it the perfect cover for all kinds of government projects and extraterrestrial activity. While everyone's distracted by the fact that Wyoming, supposedly, exists, no one is paying attention to what's really going on in that vast, empty land. And don't forget the numerous conspiracy theories about aliens and UFO sightings in the area. The fact that Wyoming doesn't have much infrastructure, people, or attention could be part of the grand plan to keep us from discovering what's really out there. Imagine this: Wyoming is just a decoy, a fake state that no one questions, all while hidden deep within it is a sprawling secret military complex working with extraterrestrial technology. It's the perfect camouflage, a state that's too boring to be interesting but is conveniently close to some of the government's most mysterious and well-guarded operations. 8. Hollywood ignores it, because it's a fake location. Hollywood is obsessed with filming in real places. You know, iconic cities like New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. Even smaller states like Vermont get their time in the spotlight. But Wyoming? It's almost never on the big screen. You'd think a state with so much space and nature would be a prime location for films. But nope, not a peep. Ask yourself, how many major films or TV shows have you seen that take place in Wyoming? Go ahead, take a minute to think of one. Exactly. You can't, because they don't exist. It's almost like Hollywood knows better than to acknowledge Wyoming. The few times it has appeared, it's either in a fleeting shot or as the backdrop for something that clearly could have been filmed somewhere else. Why is that? Because Wyoming doesn't have a cultural footprint, and any movie studio with a budget would be crazy to choose a state that no one ever talks about. In fact, the lack of recognition is the ultimate red flag, if Wyoming were real, it would be a prime location for movies and TV shows. But it's not, and the film industry conveniently leaves it off the map, as though acknowledging Wyoming would blow the whole cover. 9. Sports teams don't even bother, because no one wants to play in a fake state. Every real state has at least one major sports team. Whether it's the NFL, NBA, MLB, or NHL, every legitimate state gets its turn to show off its athletic prowess. But Wyoming? Nothing. Not a single pro sports team calls Wyoming home. And don't even think about college teams. Wyoming's most famous university might have some sports programs, but they're hardly on anyone's radar. Why is that? Simple, because Wyoming doesn't actually exist. If it were a legitimate state, it would have at least one sports team to represent it on the national stage. But instead, Wyoming is invisible to the world of professional athletics. No one's looking to draft players from Wyoming, and no one's calling them up for the big leagues. Sports teams thrive in cities and states that have cultural presence, pride, and a large fan base. Wyoming doesn't have that because it's nothing but a fictional backdrop. The absence of a major sports presence is one of the clearest signs that Wyoming is nothing more than a blank spot on a map, no real competition, no passionate sports fans, just an empty space pretending to be a state. After all, why would anyone waste time playing for a place that isn't even real? 10. The state flower is the Indian paintbrush, a paintbrush, not a flower. Wyoming's state flower is the Indian paintbrush. Now, at first glance, that might sound pretty cool, a unique, colorful flower with an interesting name. But hold on. If you take a closer look, you'll realize that the Indian paintbrush isn't even really a flower. It's more like a plant with flower-like parts, and some might argue it's closer to a paintbrush than a real flower. And that's the thing, Wyoming couldn't even get its state flower right. It's as if they just threw a name together and hoped no one would notice. Why would a real state go for something that's more of a botanical deception than a genuine flower? It's almost like they wanted to include something that looked fancy, but when you really examine it, it's just mimicking a flower, just like the whole state of Wyoming is mimicking the idea of being real. If Wyoming were legitimate, they'd have a real, recognizable flower. But no, instead they chose something that kind of looks like a flower but isn't quite. That's the whole essence of Wyoming, looks like a state, but deep down, it's not. The Indian paintbrush is the perfect metaphor for Wyoming itself, appears to be real, but a closer look shows it's just a shallow imitation of something that could have been authentic. Conclusion. In the end, the case for Wyoming's non-existence isn't just a wild conspiracy theory, it's a fascinating look at how the government could craft entire illusions to maintain control and divert attention from more pressing matters. Wyoming, with its vast empty spaces, low population, and limited cultural impact, serves as the perfect decoy, a state that, on the surface, appears to be real but, when examined closely, raises more questions than answers. Whether it's hiding secret military operations, funneling resources without oversight, or simply distracting us from more important issues, Wyoming's very existence is the perfect cover-up. So, next time you think about this state, ask yourself, how much of what we're told is really true? Maybe, just maybe, Wyoming isn't a state at all, it's just a well-executed fiction. If you liked this video, please give us a like, leave a comment about this topic and which reason convinced you that Wyoming is a fake state. Don't forget to subscribe because we have a new video every week. See you later guys, bye bye.